in a Flash, a weekly photo, video, and visual journalism news show from Around the Lens. I'm David J. Murphy.
And I'm Travis Keys.
And now let's get into the news.
Straight into it. Let's not skip a beat.
No delay. No background chat. No quibble cobble. Just let's
right.
Start
What's
talking.
our first story?
WomenPhotograph.com has released their top photos of 2020. So as I mentioned last week, we talked about this. I can't remember I think it was AP or one of the other New York Times. I know they both published their best of 2020s. And I actually found about half a dozen other websites have also published their 2020 stuff, all of which have been uploaded and updated on the story on AroundTheLens.com. So
you do love your list, don't you?
I do. I mean, I think it's a great resource for people who just want to see it all in one place.
I agree.
And don't want to have to dig through Google and maybe find what they happen to have.
Yeah.
So go check that out and you can see all the lists. But let's talk specifically about the Women Photograph list, the best of 2020. I think WomenPhotograph.com is a great website and a great resource for me, as it was during the last year of my main show, Around the Lens, where I was actually pulling a lot of the ladies from that.
We had a bunch
website.
of guests from, I'd say a majority of that last season was from there, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. I'd say probably at least 20 to 30 of
Wow.
the guests, or at least people I try to get on for those episodes, were from that website. And they were all people who were featured on their best of 2019 list. So it was a great resource for me as a sort of podcaster, and just a great way to make and network with so many wonderful and talented female photographers and photographers and journalists. Actually, panelist Lauren Crew was featured on our show last season,
right?
And she was also featured on this list again for one of the best photos of 2020. So congratulations, Lauren, if you're listening.
Repeat.
Indeed. Maybe we should go for the three-peat. I don't know. I don't know how long they've been doing the best of list.
So I know you've been looking at this list. Where there's, is there a reason that you kind of gravitate to this list, and what from last year to this year, what really stood out for you?
Yeah, I think what I like about this list is it's so different than all the other typical lists that you see pushed out by all the other major, publishers.
Right.
I think this collection highlights photos. Of course, it's going to have your protests. It's going to have your COVID stories. That's inescapable. But I think the overall tone and tenor of the photos is a little bit more sedate and considerate of the subject matter. I think it highlights the quieter moments with portraits that are, it takes what's more, so often more intense and visceral, and kind of distills it into something that's more, I would say, like I said, considerate and thoughtful of the subjects. Not just like, oh, let me see, get the, visceral spit flying out people's faces, or the violence or the action. It's more about the people and the story. So I think it's good to see this type of variety from this type of list. And I'd say that from this year to last year, it's similar in terms of that overall tone and tenor of the list. Yeah. I'm not seeing a dramatic difference in type of photos that are chosen. Again, it is more COVID centric, more protest centric, but there's also a lot of quieter stories that I think deserve to be told and are told well. Were there any pictures that jumped off the page for you?
So predominantly, this is all journalism photos that they're sharing. They're not anything personal. It's all it's all over. It ranges all over.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of the folks on this list are art photographers, who shoot, things. This isn't even all visual journalism. It's all photography, really, in general. So I think that's interesting to see that as well. So it does contrast with, there's a lot of visual journalists on this list as well. But
it seemed like there's a huge majority of journalism on the list, which is, absolutely beautiful, because some of it you look at and it just looks like these beautifully lit and composed images, but you can tell that they're actually journalistic moments, and that's what makes this list and the talent in this pool so amazing, is some of these pictures that just pop out, and there's just some wonderfuls. There was a tribe person laying in a field with this cool hat, and he had a flower in his mouth. It just is a really kind of a happy photo, and really like seeing that. And there's some dark and heavy photos in this as well, but there's a lot of talent in this, and it's a great place to look for inspiration, especially if you're a photographer. I think I look at this and get inspired, and there's some images I just see. I'm like, I gotta up my game.
There you go. Which best of lists are you featured on, Travis?
Yeah, I know, right?
Come on.
I know.
Maybe APA best of APA. Are you guys going to do that, like an APA best of 2020 type thing? Is that something you guys
So
do?
we do. We have every year we do a source book, and then we also do some other wonderful things. We have an end of the year kind of holiday party that we're doing virtually this year, but we kind of show a bunch of wonderful slideshows from our members and submitted stuff from the last year that they've shot, and it's a good moment. I like closing the year looking at what people's work from that year, and especially it brings you back because like, oh my God, that was this year, or like I didn't even realize that
Yeah.
that happened. And, it's like it's this great kind of walk down memory lane to see how much happened within 1 year.
Yeah, I mean, this year especially has felt like 10 years. Honestly, it's been such a just long, arduous slog to get through. Is this list you mentioned going to be made publicly available, or is this just for internally for your members?
This will be. I mean, I think the slideshow we'll put up on our APA Facebook page and our website, so it'll be there for people to view and to see the work. And it's one of the things that we kind of put together behind the scenes, and we love sharing, especially to everybody that hasn't seen some of our stuff. And we have a full-on YouTube page now that we share a ton of content and original content that we do. Nice. One of those things that we use when we're traveling around is a computer. And Dell has a new computer that's coming out. Their Dell 17-inch. What do you use for? Are you a desktop or a laptop, or you have both?
I am ambidextrous, as you need to be in this day and age. Either have the laptop, right, and that's your desktop because you plug it into a monitor, or you have a desktop and a laptop because you got to have something on the go, right? You can't not be able to go mobile.
Absolutely.
So I've got my old MacBook Pro, my old tried and true, reliable MacBook Pro from, I think, 2014, which is still doing great and kicking it, no problems. And then I've got my desktop, which is a PC. It's an iBuy Power with a 2080 Ti. It's my powerhouse PC. So
you see, you're one of those. You're one of those rare few that is actually using both systems. Mac. Usually find people use either full like Mac fanboys or and hate PC and like why would you ever touch a PC or people that use PC. I use both as well, and I've used the XPS line for a while now. I used some generations of their 13th, their 2-in-1, which is sort of their tablet and laptop in one. That folds over and with a Wacom pen, which is great. I have their 15-inch, so I've used this computer a lot. Well, they have a 17-inch now, which is really sort of the all-around best thing if you're going to really kind of use one computer to travel around and edit. Whether it be your 4K content or your maybe these wonderful photos or composites that you're doing. The Dell XPS 17, not even the highest range. I think comes in at a 10th generation 8th core Intel i7 processor, 32 gigabytes of RAM, DDR4, which is great. And anybody that knows when you're playing with it, you definitely want to stick your RAM in there. It helps you on the back end so much. It has an Nvidia Geforce Rtx, which is fantastic because the RTX line is allowing you to do a lot of different stuff now. They have noise cancellation and video stuff that is pretty designated just to that RTX line. So there's a lot of fun stuff that you can do with that graphics card. 1 terabyte M.2 SSD, which is great, and it's going to speed up everything. The M.2 is really the fastest of the SDs right now.
And it has one of those in my desktop, actually. This past Black Friday, I got an M.2 drive. 2 terabytes, stuck it in my desktop. And
is it your boot drive? Is your system on that?
I wouldn't mind it. I just don't know how to move it, and it's like
it's a big ordeal to do that. Yeah.
Is it? Yeah.
Well, it's not. It's not big. You can back up. You can back up everything. Virtual backup your main drive too, okay. And then do a fresh install, or you could move it over to the M.2. There are ways to do it. But to finish up,
I have it coming off an SSD right now, so it's not slow at all. But,
no, things that there's a lot of things that you want to move on to SSD, and everything that's a little slower, you move on to the hard drives, because they move a little slower. But those SSDs will allow you to access information much quicker and boot up your system a lot faster, which is really great. So the Dell XPS is really kind of an exciting all-around computer. That's someone that's kind of looking. They're thin, they're sleek looking, the screens are gorgeous. I mean, really, it's kind of like whoa. That kind of screen. So I was definitely interested in this computer, and just seeing how often someone should upgrade a computer, or when they feel like they're doing it. And I guarantee you, a lot of times if you have a MacBook or an old PC, a lot of those laptops are not that upgradable. So unfortunately, with desktops on a PC, you can just swap out pieces and like that pretty much all the time on motherboards, especially if you build your own PC. But on a lot of these laptops, they're not upgradable. So you really have to decide, is your work being stifled, and you can't upgrade it, and that's when you're going to know if you're cursing and hitting the screen because the rendering is taking long and it's taking forever. It's time to upgrade. But I think maybe on follow up with us if you're looking into why or how or should I upgrade a laptop. Please reach out to us because we'll certainly be there to help out.
Yeah, if I were only using my MacBook Pro right now, like I got the desktop PC because I was without my MacBook Pro for a year, and I needed something to compute on, and I was looking at my options, and for the same price as like a top of the line MacBook Pro 16-inch that had just come out, I could get a super duper spec'd out desktop. So I was like, why don't I, instead of buying this laptop, why don't I try a desktop again? Because I've had desktops, I've had laptops over my lifetime, and I thought, let's try desktop again, see how that does. Because again, I was using my MacBook as my main PC for 5 years. Pretty much, it was my desktop, it was my laptop, and a lot of people do that, and that's that's the way to go with most of these computers nowadays, whatnot. But had I only had the MacBook Pro, I would have probably upgraded to one of the new M1 MacBooks. Those things are so freaking powerful, and I wish this person who had reviewed the XPS had compared it to the MacBooks, because those are what, it does compare it to the MacBook Pro 16-inch, which is, I can understand, the equivalent, right? It uses the same chipset and whatnot, but it would have been so great to compare it to the new M1 Max, because I think that's what is the new hotness right now. That's where you see everybody comparing everything. I think there is a few videos out there. Max Tech, I believe, has compared it to the XPS. I don't know how it's done. I'm sure it's held up, but again, looking at the future, right? That's the system on a chip, those ARM processors, that's the future right there.
I mean, that's what I don't think people are thinking. People are thinking like this is a CPU. It's not. It's basically a full-on computer on a chip. It has the memory, the DDR memory on it. It's all on that little thing. And it's there are a lot of things. Actually, Lightroom and just got updated for the M.1, so that's nice. Reconfigured for it. So that's going to be great. And in other kind of bonus news, Apple, since we're talking about Apple released their latest firmware update for the phone, and it is now introducing Apple ProRes for us photographers out there, which is really exciting. The Pro Raw, they're calling it Apple Pro Raw, and it's now in the new release for the Apple phone. And I'm going to be playing with that. And I'm sure since you don't have an Apple phone, so you won't be playing with that. But
I have an Apple phone, but it's my work phone. So
okay,
yeah.
But I mean, obviously the Samsung takes great pictures, but it's kind of cool that Apple is really kind of diving in to give us the full RAWs now on these exceptional phones, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah, Travis, definitely report back to us and let us know how that camera does, and maybe you'll be shooting it more now that you can shoot RAW in the new year. And as the new year approaches, we are approaching 2021. It's right around the corner. This is actually the last show before the new year. So, we'll probably come back to you in 2021 and see how that's going. Hopefully better than 2020. But, every time there's a new year, I like to talk about resolutions because I think it's important that we look back, but also look ahead and see where we want to be. Every year is another opportunity to grow, develop, and get better, or just find ways to improve yourself. So I like to set resolutions aside for myself, and the one I always set, and I never seem to be able to meet.
I know where this is going, Dave. I know where this is going.
You know it is, because you've heard this conversation before on our old show, which is to shoot that photo a day, right? That photo a day project, and it always kind of starts with high momentum at the beginning of the year, and then it just kind of dips down, and
life gets in the way.
Indeed. But I'll be honest, I shoot almost every day. I don't, maybe I'm not making an aggressive push towards it, but almost every day I'm taking out that phone at least and taking a snap of something. I just don't make a habit of, putting it on a website and gloating about it and saying, look at my photo a day, but I try to. But I'll be honest, there's many days where I forget or don't take it or don't feel like taking it. So
now, do you take the honest way out and say I didn't do it today, or do you take two the next day and say, oh?
When I was trying to actually do the project and maintain it, I would do that. I'd be like, I'd shoot, something in the morning, of the day after, and be like, oh yeah, I shot this yesterday. I shoot it like early in the morning, so it's still dark out. So it looks like night, Perfect. But too often I would get to, I'm about to crawl into bed and go to sleep, and I'd be like, oh, I didn't take my photo a day, and so I'd snap like my lamp or something by my bedside, and I was just like, this isn't what this project is about. But it's something that might be a bit more realistic for people if you can't do that, is the 52-week photo challenge. So that's a new project each week, and there's a website which I'll link to in the show notes. But I was looking over last year's assignments, and it's pretty neat. Like, each week focuses on subjects like depth of field, or perhaps focus or whatnot, so leading lines. So these different sort of typical motifs that you deal with when you're shooting, it might motivate you to kind of get out there and actually take a photograph and do it with purpose. And having it being once a week, I think, is a bit more realistic for people. But Travis, are there any resolutions that you have for the coming year, whether it be photography or personal?
Yeah, it's kind of strange because this last year was kind of everything that I was expecting to do this year, I'm kind of transferring into next year, hopefully, because it seemed like this year was kind of a leap year, as they say. But I definitely, like you, want to, I think, focus in on accomplishing a couple more really defined personal projects and shoots, that are really kind of choreographed and really planned out, and do some shoots that are really just pulling some people together, and whether it be the full costuming and makeup, and really kind of going the extra mile, and creating some cool images this year.
Yeah, for me personally, I'd love to, with this new editing software and the new editing hardware I have, I've got the DaVinci, Studio and whatnot. I really want to focus a lot more on creating videos with, how do I say, purpose, so to speak. I want to create content that people want to watch. Honestly, most of the time I'm making videos that are just rando B-roll stringer vlogs, that no one really watches. So I want to try and maybe create a narrative or a content or a story around the life story that is the Murphys. So I think more focus on video and creating video projects people want to watch. And then personally, I'm going to be turning 40 in next year, so I want to get my health back in check. I think I've gained a little weight over the last few years, so I need to kind of get that back in control. So that's my personal.
Good goals. All good goals. Yep.
Indeed.
All good goals.
And who else has been making some goals? Adobe, some earning goals, right, Travis?
Well, you know what? I got to say, there was Adobe's earnings have shown a great point, but there was an article in Petapixel that Adobe is planning with those earnings to do more kind of investing in further in their AI editing. And I really wanted to discuss that AI editing, because if you saw in the last, in October at Adobe Max, when they released the new, Photoshop and Lightroom and all that, Photoshop has these neural filters, which are pretty amazing, where you can actually go in and make someone happy, and like if someone was smiling or not smiling like this, no teeth showing, you can actually kind of pull that happy meter, and suddenly there's teeth and smiling. So it brings in that whole kind of thing, is like how far is like what the realism, and like I think it's kind of, we're getting to that age, is it's kind of scary. And just to be, very transparent, I do get paid and do work for Adobe. So in terms of, them investing further in AI editing and stuff like that, I do know about some projects they're working on, and I can't discuss it, but they are really kind of studying the way people take pictures, the way they edit pictures, and they're doing some wonderful stuff. Now, what do you think about that whole AI, the deep fakes in AI, and being able to change a photo that much after the fact? What do you feel about that?
I'm kind of a mixed feeling, and I'll talk about, what Photoshop has done with regard to image manipulation, but I think specifically with AI, I'm excited by it, right? Yeah. I think it's inevitable, whether Adobe does it or Google does it, or, rando Chinese company, Huawei, or somebody's going to do it. It's just a matter of who's going to do it. And I'm glad that Adobe is doing it, because I think that, they're implementing it well, and they're doing it in a professional manner. And, it's neat to see. It's, from a purely sciencey technology standpoint and what we can do nowadays with AI and computers, I think, it's just amazing to see it.
Yeah.
But I do fear its overall effect on people's general trust in imagery.
I think it's a really good point. I think that's a very good point. I think there's,
because it's like photo, right? Photo is always the first step, right? Whenever you see and hear about these AI manipulation, photo is the first step. Video is the next step, right?
Yeah.
If you can do it for one frame, you can do it for 30 frames. If you can do it for 30 frames in a second, if you get, the processing power that high, now you're doing it to video.
Yeah.
So we've already seen things like deep fakes. But what
yeah.
if, you're filming your family at the, going to the park or something, and your son is just not cooperating. He's got a dour look on his face. Am I going to be able to go into Premiere and now up the happy slider, and now he's like happy-go-lucky, he's skipping? What's the extent? What's the limit? So it's interesting, but it's also scary,
And what you're saying is not to like, oh, that's going to happen in the future. That's now you can do that, which is crazy.
Can you do that right now? Is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
That's what the slider does, exactly that.
Yeah.
And you can change the position of the head. If I was looking this way, suddenly you can do this. You can change where the lighting is coming from. And they're just starting to roll out these neural filters. So there's going to be a lot more to come.
I don't use Adobe personally because I don't want to pay $50 a month for it, but I know you use it. And have you messed around with these sliders? Have you done it on your own work?
I think that's a misconception with Adobe right there off the bat is you wouldn't be paying $50 a month. You only pay $50 for the full creative suite, and that's everything.
Sure.
So if you wanted to get in as a photographer or something like that, you can get Photoshop and Lightroom for $10 a month, which is quite affordable if you're a professional.
Weren't they toying with raising the price on that, though? Or did they decide to renege on that? I wasn't sure. I heard that rumor, though.
I think you're referring to there was something a little like many months back that they tested the waters and quickly reversed it.
Right,
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah.
No, I think the Photoshop Lightroom for $10 a month is a great deal.
Yeah.
And if I use those programs enough, I would definitely consider that because I'm now doing my video editing on DaVinci, so I don't need the entire suite for Premiere and whatnot. And that's why, again, when I've had it, I've used the $50 a month program because I used all those programs, a lot. But what was my original question?
I don't know, but I think you're going down the path of there's lots of great options out there, whether it be Infinity or whether it be the new Capture ones. There's some great options out there and affordable ones. Where you don't have to. You can pay Infinity. I think you pay once and you own the product and updates and stuff like that. So there's a lot of options out there for creatives.
Yeah, absolutely. But to go back, I do remember my question. Have you used the photo slider manipulating AI thing? Like, what's your personal experience with it?
So it depends on the slider. In terms of moving someone's head or giving them a smile, I've done that just for fun, just to see. And they have one that ages or de-ages you, which is pretty wild to see. But the one that I have done is there's a beauty retouching kind of slider, and just for it's actually pretty amazing. So if I had a pimple and a couple little marks and stuff like that, I literally can put that in the neural filter and it'll just clear it up in a second.
Wow.
So there have been times when I've done a quick beauty edit to use that slider, and it works very well.
That's awesome. So you have used it for professional work?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
Cool. No, I've seen some of the stuff, and it's like amazing how much time it saves. One click versus having to go through and individually heel brush as someone's face. I think it's amazing.
And it's funny because I think that remember when Final Cut came out with their I think it was Final Cut 10, and all the editors got upset because it seemed to make it too easy for people, and that, they're like, oh, this kind of takes away from my profession. Suddenly we're going into moments like even Content Aware and stuff like that in these wonderful programs of Photoshop that take what used to take us so much time to do, whether mask out something in Photoshop or get rid of it, that literally you can get rid of it in a second. And it's unbelievable the change in power over the last couple of years that Adobe has put into that software.
So what we were talking about before is, this AI, right? It's so great. You can do all kinds of things. You can change people's faces and whatnot. But the problem there is that with Photoshop, of course, photoshopping is a term that people just use, colloquially.
Generic, like Q-tip.
Exactly. And so whether or not Adobe likes that or not, it's there. And that's what people think of it as. People think of manipulated photos as photoshopped. And so what Adobe is trying to do is essentially make it so they're trying to regain some of the space with regard to the verification and trust that comes from imagery. They want you to be able to look at a photo online and trust that it isn't manipulated. So what they've done is they've created an organization to deal with this issue, and they are trying to create, it's called the Content Authenticity Initiative. And essentially what it does is it creates a open source attribution system to images to give viewers more info about where it came from and whether it was edited or not. And I'm, excited about this system. I don't know how well it will do or how, well adopted it will be, but I think it's a good first step. What do you think about this, Travis? Do you think this is kind of like the way we need to go now? We now need a second layer to approve and essentially verify imagery?
I think it's very important that we definitely address it and start laying down some groundwork on how we're going to approach this, because now it's just too easy for people to say, oh, that's fake, and without any verification. So it also helps verify things that are true opposed to false. So I mean, it's I think it's good on both ends, that it can be a verified untouched photo, or it can be a verified, this has been manipulated. I think can earn back some trust. And I know that a lot of people will look like Adobe's like the big, like, I don't know if like maybe they're thinking about like Apple or Coca-Cola, that they're big corporate entity, but I know firsthand from working with them how much they care about the people in the community and reaching all people in the community and having a safe place for those people. So knowing that firsthand, I'm actually really kind of looking upon this story and saying, all right, this is good. This is because it's not coming from a bad place. This is actually coming from a really good place and concern. So I'm obviously all behind it.
Yeah, no, I would love to see a sort of history, if you will, that would be like an editing history built into the metadata for an image. So it's like if you download someone's image or, maybe right click on it or something, you can go to edit history and you can see, oh, okay, they cropped it, they color corrected. Oh, they did some rubber stamping. Oh, they did a little warping. I see. Okay, so at least hey, this was edited. And I think it'd be even better if there was a way to like see that original image compared to the edited image, like in the actual browser or whatnot. I think that'd be a neat tool. Probably a little bit too extensive, but
Well, it's, then we're kind of going. I think we're going almost too much. Then I think in journalism, you would obviously the assumption it hasn't been edited at all. And I think if someone's a portrait or or a creative, then they should have the liberty to do anything because they're artists. It doesn't matter. But if it's in advertising where it's saying it's a model and she's been obviously slendered or totally retouched, I think it's important. And that's one thing actually in France that I really love what they did is if on an advertisement in France, if it has been photoshopped, the advertisement has to say that it's been photoshopped.
Yeah, no, that's kind of what I'm getting at is I want to know, like, hey, you are trying to pass off something as the real world, and it's not real. It has been manipulated. And, it goes back to this whole idea we're trying to limit people's mental health, not limit their mental health, but I mean limit their effect on mental health because they see an image of a woman who's unrealistically skinny.
Yeah, they get this false sense of reality and how damaging it is for kids and their own personal. Yeah, I agree.
I think that's where you want to see that edit history. It's like you're trying to pass off something as the perfect, but no, there's actually, so you can point to and say, no, look, they did a lot of manipulation to get to this thing. Just like, you see these backgrounds or these sort of behind the scenes on like photo shoots, that sometimes you see where, hours in the makeup chair and doing the hair and like, they're showing like, hey, this isn't, this is a made up version of me for the photo. I want to see that kind of in the history of the photo.
I've had so many of those conversations, especially when people look at my work and say, oh, you shot that model or you shot that person. Like, oh my God, they're so beautiful. I'm like, I'll tell you the truth. That person walked in and they had a ton of zits and they had, bad hair and they had, it's like they're real people too. So I always try and give them the realistic, vision of it, although as artists and stuff like that we kind of put this fake world upon everybody and like everything's always glamorous and they'll always look fabulous, which is not the case.
Yeah, and it's tough because you can't give the client like, oh, here's all the pock marks and the zits and stuff. I kept them on there, so you can be more honest. No, they'll be like, get rid of that stuff. We're paying you good money to make our client look beautiful. You can't win in that situation because. I see it a lot here in Korea too, because there's a huge push for things like plastic surgery and beauty and lightening skin. It's like you see it all the time in sort of Korean media and commercials and stuff like that. So there's a beauty standard that they want everyone to attain.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's necessarily healthy for society as a whole, but I don't know how you get around that.
It definitely is not healthy.
No.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. And speaking of, just going down this whole thing of, what's manipulated and changed and everything, we're going to go into like Google right now. And Google is really known for their Pixel phones and all the AI they're doing and creating an amazing photograph from, enhancing dark, and we've talked about that before. If you're using the Pixel phone at night and it's using, taking a bunch of shots to make a night shot, is that an actual journalistic usable photo? Because it's changed a lot of things. Well, Google has now invested into sort of a room that had, I think, 300 and some odd cameras. I forget how many it had, but they took pictures from all over a subject and lit it all over the subject. So now they can actually, in post, change the lighting completely. So another AI that is suddenly, like, we're getting to a point where you just take a picture and everything else, it's like, we'll fix it in post, is really going to come to the forefront of this, is we can fix it in post, where I can put a subject here and suddenly light it from behind, doing all these amazing things. It's like we're getting to a place where we can be very creative, but also, like, what does it do to us as creative photographers shooting on the spot? What do you think about? It's obviously fun to play with, and I think we all love it. But do you like it?
Yeah, I know, right? Well, I mean, this kind of goes back to our previous conversation, right? About it's not just Adobe now who has to essentially say, like, this image is manipulated or not. Now it's going to be Google. It's getting this brave new world, if you will, of manipulated imagery, and you don't know if it's been manipulated or not unless there's something, either in the metadata or the producer tells you outright. But yeah, it's amazing what can be done after the fact.
Yeah.
We've already, like, with the ability and the dynamic range of most cameras nowadays, you can restore an image that's been extremely overblown or underexposed. It's amazing. You can basically do exposure in post. And I know there was the light camera or some kind of the
Lytra.
special camera that
Lytra
that allowed you to do focus in post. So it's almost like, now you can change with Adobe AI, you can change people's look and position. So it's almost like you just kind of generally point the camera at a scene or situation, and you can kind of build it after the fact. It's both amazing and also scary that you can do that much control. And honestly, with certain aspects of it, I don't actually have a problem with certain aspects from a visual journalism perspective, right? So focus in post, if that was something that was just built into, like, my R5, right, and I didn't have to worry about, focus, or I could fix a little bit, if something was slightly out of focus, I could easily just restore it. I would have no problem with that from a visual journalism perspective, because you're just basically changing a slider and you're adjusting what the camera saw. Like, the camera's picking up all different focus points at the same time. So you're not, changing the composition. You're not manipulating the image. You're just bringing back what was there, just like you would if it was an exposure issue. So from a journalistic standpoint, I have no problem with post focus. I would love to see that, integrated into modern cameras.
And that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And already it's starting to.
Right. It's when you start getting into things where you can manipulate someone's hand or move things around or change their face.
What you're talking about there, I just came across an app on iPhone the other day that's called Remini. And basically, if I put in a photo and say I had a Coke can and I'm holding it in front of me and the Coke can's in focus and I'm kind of soft in here, but suddenly you're like, I really want the detail in the eyes. Remini can actually go in and through AI, it is creating and adding the detail there through AI that wasn't there. And in fact, someone was testing it the other day, and it actually is using other photos to help fill in the detail, because someone was doing like, oh, look at this. The glasses are actually that the person were wearing are now different glasses, but it looks like the same exact person, or the earring changed. But if you look at it quickly, you'd never know it was a different, different parts, but it looks like your picture was just sharpened. It's crazy how good it is and how frightening that it's doing that.
Yeah, I think I saw it. Maybe have been on Adobe where they have this new feature. It's like super zoom, where you can zoom in on an image.
That is one of the
bring it out. Yeah,
that's one of the neural filters that you can use in a Photoshop now. That literally you can zoom right in, and it just keeps all the details and finds them up. It's incredible.
Yeah, that's amazing. That point where you mentioned where it's taking from other photos to kind of build this new photo. That I would see as manipulation, of course. But if it's like something where it's done in camera and the lens or the system or the sensor, like I know they have a lot of these cameras nowadays where they have so many megapixels that they can actually bin the pixels and create like a lower resolution image, but it collects different information on each pixel, and then it allows you more control after the fact. If that was something that was readily available and easily accessible, and it allowed me to post focus, great. But if you're talking about building something with AI, yeah, that's going to be not kosher on the visual journalism side.
Well, you know what? You brought up megapixels, and I want to introduce a new little segment because we're a new show, and I want to even introduce a newer segment called This Week in Rumors. Basically, we're going to kind of fireball these quick rumors that are going around in the industry that, and you brought up megapixels. It is rumored that Samsung on their phones is working on a 600 megapixel camera, and you have to think when is too much, right? And obviously we'll keep our eyes on this. I think right now they were saying to actually do that it would be that thick, so they're looking to make it thinner and stuff like that. Also in rumors, Canon knocked it out of the park with their R5, but it sounds like they're working on an R5S, which will be a high megapixel, rumored to be a 90 megapixel with pixel shift features. It's going to have the same design as the R5, and it might have slight revision to the image stabilization system, and probably close in price. And obviously, since the R5 did so well, Sony's going to volley back, and it looks like they're going to do a A9S or an A9 III or A9 3S or whatever, the A9R. Who knows what they're going to call it, but it looks like it's going
whatever
to
it is, you'll have it.
I might, although it's, all these things we have to wonder because all these are coming with higher and higher price tags. So it's like, can we jump into them? And the rumor mill is saying like $5,000 on that, which is really, really expensive to jump into a system. But they're saying it's going to have 8K, have no heating issues. The specs are going to be, very similar to the new AV, the A7S III in terms of its menu and focusing and and the steady shot that have, they say, is game changing in the S. But it's going to be an expensive camera. And then obviously with that, Fuji has a rumor too. They have their 100 megapixel medium format camera, and they're looking to introduce that with image stabilization and a slightly smaller format. So there's a lot of exciting things. And the last thing I think in the rumor mill, which I will put no longer quite a rumor, is seen in the wild, has been the new Sony 35 1.4 GM. I saw it. Saw it leaked on a camera. So I can't say it's true or not true, but there's a picture. So that's Week in Rumors, and obviously we'll follow these stories, and if they become true or not true, we'll let you know.
Yeah, I'm excited about anything that's new or amazing. I think Canon with their R5S, if that's real, I think it's pretty neat. One thing I've heard about that one is it won't shoot 8K. It'll actually just be more of a stills camera.
I did hear they're dumbing down the video on it. Mm-hmm. I did hear that as well.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, better, to have cameras that have different focus and different features.
And that's why I think it's going to have the similar price point.
Yeah.
And that's why they said that. Yeah.
No, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, if 45 megapixels ain't enough for you, then, hey, go 90 megapixels, or you can go GFX and get a 100 megapixel camera. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
600 megapixels in a phone. Come on. I'll be intrigued to see. I mean, they already have the 108 megapixel sensor in their Samsungs, their S20 and Ultras and all that stuff, which is great. I'm not going to downplay more megapixels, but it's just like you're filling that hard drive space up with more stuff. So I don't know. It's not a selling point for me like it used to be. Like I'm okay with 12 megapixel camera, images.
You have to really question what are you getting for that in a camera phone, because the sensor's not bigger. So how good is the quality? It's
And the people who have used it, the 108 megapixels, say it's fine, but it's slow. It's like it takes a few seconds to process the image, which makes sense. But it's like, from a usability perspective, it kind of limits its usability.
But I guess you got to push the medium to get the new stuff. So, go for it. Go for it.
And just, the Sony 35 millimeter 1.4 you mentioned.
Yeah.
Like, is that remarkable from a non-Sony perspective? Like, I mean, like Canon has a 35 millimeter, I think 1.4. Is this the first time they've gotten this?
No, there was a Sony Zeiss lens, and it's one of the older lenses now. And now that Sony is coming out with their 24 GM, which it's one of the best lenses I've ever used. It's so sharp, so good that they're really kind of redefining, coming the second generation of these mirrorless lenses, prime lenses, and they're really doing a great job with them. Their 135 is, unlike the bokeh rendering on that, and how beautiful that lens renders for portrait and fashion, so is unbelievable. So they're really kind of pushing all these new primes that are geared for the high megapixel cameras, and they are making a difference.
Cool. Well, yeah, I know one of the primes that I'm interested in is the 50 from Canon, the 1.8 that recently just came out. That's
their
definitely high
nifty
on my
50,
wish
right?
list.
It's a
Yeah.
very affordable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be something I get eventually.
Yeah.
It's not on not gonna get it right now, but
I'll tell
definitely
you,
something I'll keep in
the
mind.
one person, like everybody that I talk to that shoots that new Canon, they say the 85 is one of the best lenses they've ever shot on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I'll keep that in mind as well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's going to end this week's show. Thanks all for tuning in and finding out more about these stories. If you'd like to know more, please, by all means, go to our website, aroundthelens.com, and you can see show notes from this week's show. Furthermore, you can go to any of our social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, etc., and you can comment on these stories and let us know what you thought. Do you think we got it? Do you think we are a little off? Are there stories you would have liked us to have talked about? Do you have any suggestions for new segments in the future, like the rumor control, rumor management, whatever we're going to call it, like that? If you have ideas or suggestions, let us know.
This week in the rumor mill. It's very important, especially since we're a news show, that you spread the word about us, that you let us know what's working, that's working, that you hit subscribe and you hit the notification button so that you can find out when new things come out. Because obviously, next time you see us, it'll be 2021. It'll be a whole new, brand new year. So we look forward to seeing you then and really carrying on this conversation of new stuff week to week.
Sweet. All right. Well, till next year, I'm David J. Murphy.
And I'm Travis Keys. And this has been...
We're bouncing.
We're gonna bounce. I actually like that.
You like the bounce?
This has been In a Flash, and we're gonna bounce.
All right. See y'all. Peace.